Welcome to the G5 Hive and our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you are listening in podcast form, please give us a rate and review. Today, we will be taking a look at the South Alabama Jaguars, who finished 7-6 in 2023 and ended the season with a win in the 68 Ventures Bowl. They recently wrapped up their 2024 spring practice with their spring game on April 20th. We have a special guest joining us today, Creg Stephenson, sports writer for ALDOTCOM and covers the South Alabama Jaguars. He is a Heisman voter and a one-man crusade against unnecessary suffixes in sports. Creg can be found at Creg Stephenson on X. Welcome to the show.
Is the whole show going to be about that, or are we going to just deal with that off the top? Because I got some thoughts. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, we love having you. Hopefully those highlights got you a little jacked to talk about some South Alabama football.
That's a pretty good overview of the history. Pretty good overview of the history of the program. I thought I saw the beginning. I was like, uh-oh, they got Ladd in there. They don't play in Ladd anymore. But I saw the whole, the breadth and depth of it. That was really well done, I thought.
Thank you. It's certainly I've been questioning lately making those special videos after doing about 20 of them so far and having 40 more to do. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely fun for sure.
Creg, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you into the sports journalism and covering South Alabama Jaguars?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's kind of the same story everybody has. I think you play sports until you realize you're no longer good enough to play, and then you try to find another way to stay around it. And obviously, I was always a good writer and, did well in creative writing and English and, followed sports and all that sort of thing. So that's kind of what led me to it. And, wrote for my college paper and all that sort of stuff. And, I've been at AL.com now, going on 10 years, actually. This will be my ninth full season covering South Alabama. I kind of took on, I came on halfway through the 2015 season, but I have covered them ever since then. In my background, I've covered a lot of different stuff. I covered Alabama for a few years. Actually, the very early Saban years, I had the poor timing of getting off the beat the year before they won the first national championship. But I've covered some Southern Miss, covered Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and some Jacksonville State and Troy and all that kind of stuff. So I've been around.
Very nice. This offseason, the Jaguars lose their head coach, Kane Womack, who went on to be the defensive coordinator for the Alabama Crimson Tide. But they didn't have to look too far in his replacement, promoting Major Applewhite to the helm, where he previously served as offensive coordinator. What can you tell us about Coach Applewhite and what he brings to the table in this new role for South Alabama?
Yeah, the last two hires they've made, really, they haven't. It hasn't been a very long and, I'm sure it was a diligent search, but they got their number one candidate both times. When they got Kane, who had been the defensive coordinator here before, went to Indiana for a few years and came back, and then Major Applewhite, who obviously was Kane's offensive coordinator. He's a guy that is really plugged into this part of the country. I think his name still means something in the game because he was a great college quarterback at Texas and He's from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is only about 2.5, 3 hours from Mobile. So he's got ties in this part of the state. He's coached at Alabama a couple of times, recruited this part of the country and all that kind of stuff. And the offenses he's put on the field the last couple of years at South Alabama have been pretty good, the best offenses they've ever had here. And so I think the continuity there is a big part of what is going to help him succeed if he does.
Let's get to the position where it all starts on offense, and that's the quarterback. They lose last year's starter in Carter Bradley, but returned Gio Lopez, who started the bowl game and played pretty well. They also returned Bishop Davenport and true freshman early enrollee Jaron Hollins there for the spring. How did the quarterback battle shape up this spring?
Yeah, Bradley is probably the best quarterback they've ever had here. Holds virtually every record in the record book, and he signed as an undrafted free agent with the Las Vegas Raiders. His dad is a longtime NFL coach. But Gio Lopez did get some meaningful playing time last year. He started the Troy game when Bradley was out with a knee injury. He did not start the bowl game, but he played most of the bowl game and wound up being the MVP of the bowl game. So he comes into the season with some valuable experience. Now, I will say this: he didn't exactly win the battle in the spring going away, at least from what I saw. I thought Bishop Davenport, who's a Utah State transfer, played some as a true freshman a couple of years ago. I thought looked okay. Jared Hollins, who is a local guy from Mary G. Montgomery right here in the Mobile area, really showed a strong arm, I thought, in the spring game. But I do think it's Lopez's job to lose going into the fall. It's just it has not been decided yet. But Lopez is he's a lefty who can run and has a good arm. He's you hate to compare anybody to Tim Tebow, but it's that style. I'm not saying he is Tim Tebow, but it's that style of play. He can run, pull the ball down, can get the ball down the field through the air, and that's a dimension they haven't really had here in a while. The quarterback run was basically not a part of their offense the last couple of years, and I think he's going to bring that dimension this year.
One thing that I've seen, like people making a big deal about the spring game, him going 0 for 13. Like in your mind, how big of a deal was that?
Not at all. I think they were the defense knew what was coming a lot of the time, and Major Applewhite is like any football coach. He's paranoid, and he didn't want to put anything on tape that anybody could use against him. So they were. It was very vanilla. It was like, I don't know if you guys are maybe too young for this, but you remember the original Tecmo Bowl where you only had 4 offensive plays? That's kind of like what they were doing. I mean, there was not a whole lot of innovation and creativity to what they were doing in the spring game.
You kind of touched on the local product there, Jared Hollins. For those that aren't maybe familiar with his style, can you tell us a little bit more about Jared Hollins?
Yeah, he's a pretty prototypical drop back passer. Had a really great career at Mary G. Montgomery. They had not had much of a history at all, and he took them to a region championship, and they made a pretty good playoff run. He was a all-state quarterback in the highest classification. So, if you can get that guy at South Alabama, you're doing a pretty good job. He's kind of skinny, though. I did notice that. He's not 200 pounds, I wouldn't say. Maybe 185, 190. So he's definitely going to have to put on some weight and muscle in the weight room before he's ready to play at the college level.
Moving over to the running game, they lose 1,000-yard rusher LaDamian Webb, but they do return Kentrell Bullock and Braylon McReynolds, among others. How did those guys look in the spring?
Yeah, Webb was, I hate to keep repeating myself. He's the best running back they've ever had here too. 2-time 1,000-yard rusher, and really just a tough runner. Not really breakaway speed, but just powerful and hard to bring down. McReynolds is a guy they really liked coming in. He's another Mobile guy. Played quite a bit as a true freshman. Then last year in the season opener broke his collarbone. But he did come back for the final 3 games of the regular season and started the bowl game when Webb was out. So I think he's the number 1 guy. They really like him as a pass catcher out of the backfield in particular. Pretty small, short, but tough runner. And then Bullock is more of a slasher and, breakaway speed type guy. Started his career at Ole Miss. So I think those guys will rotate. I think you'll probably get a pretty even split in terms of playing time and carry between those two. And then they have 2 redshirt freshmen, Jarvis Durr and P.J. Martin. Martin got quite a bit of playing time last year, in the 4 games that allowed him to redshirt. Durr got hurt and missed the spring, but they do have depth there. But, yeah, it's definitely McReynolds, Bullock. They're going to be the guys that carry the load.
Do you think between McReynolds and Bullock is one of them maybe more like the goal line back of the two?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think Bullock was the guy that probably because he's bigger is the one they'll use on the goal line more. And they have a freshman coming in, actually, Demarion Bothwell, who is in kind of one of the middle range classifications in Alabama. Was kind of a do it all guy, ran for almost 3,000 yards as a senior, and he's potentially a guy that could kind of fill that role too. He's a bigger back.
The passing game loses leading receiver Colin Lacey to Louisville, but returns Jamal Pritchett, Javon Ivory, Jeremiah Webb, and others, and gets a Devin Vosen back from injury. A lot of people kind of forget that he was out last year. How did this room shape up this spring?
Yeah, and again, Voisin did not participate in spring. He tore his ACL in week 2 last year, and you're right. I mean, he just you lost 60 receptions and 800 yards from the previous season. Colin Lacey had a great year. Set the school record with 91 receptions, had a couple of really big-time games, and obviously caught the attention of some Power Fives, and he's at Louisville now. But they do have they have depth and experience at that position. Voisin, I think, is eligible for a medical red shirt, so theoretically he could come back next year. So depending on how you count it, they have either 4 or 5 senior wide receivers. Jamal Pritchett is a guy that kind of took over Voisin's role last year. Had a big year. He's really small. I mean, he's 5'8", 165 pounds probably, but just can get down the field and get in the clear. So those 2 are your top guys. Javon Ivory is the guy who transferred in from Memphis. Played quite a bit last year. Didn't really make a major impact, but I think they're counting for more out of him. Jeremiah Webb is a guy who transferred from South Dakota. People that follow the FCS might remember South Dakota beat South Dakota State on a Hail Mary a couple of years ago. He's the guy that caught the touchdown pass. So he's here now. Started the bowl game. Had I think he had a 40-yard catch to the 1-yard line in that game. They have a couple of other guys. Shamar Sangren, who's a junior college transfer, who didn't play a ton last year. And then Noah Toster, who transferred up from Division II Chowan University in North Carolina. So they got numbers for sure. If Voisin can come back and be even close to what he was 2 years ago, they're really going to be ahead of the game there.
So how is that recovery coming along for Voisin?
I think he's hit all the markers. To my knowledge, he's going to be ready for that June 1st when they start the off-season program. He did not do anything, in uniform at all during the spring. So, it's pretty standard, I guess, ACL recovery. But they expect him to be back, ready to go for the summer. And then, of course, when the season gets here in August.
So Voisin comes back, but then you got Pritchett, who kind of took over some of Voisin's role last year. How do you think those 2 work out in this scheme next year?
Yeah, they've always had 2 guys at least that could get the job done. Going back to when they had Jalen Tolbert and Colin Lacey, and then even before that, Kawan Baker, who's spent some time in the NFL, and then last year, 2 years ago, they had Jalen Wayne, Devin Voisin, and Colin Lacey. All 3 had pretty good years, and then last year you had Lacey and Pritchett kind of emerging as the second guy. So I think it'll be pretty. Carter Bradley had a real comfort level with Jaden Voisin. That was the guy he was always looking to in big situations and on third down and that sort of thing. So, with the new quarterback, we'll see kind of how that develops. But Pritchett, certainly proved that he could, he was dependable last year.
Do you think we'll see Pritchett kind of move into the slot role with Lacey being on the outside?
Well, based on his size, you would assume that, but not really. I think he may be an outside guy because I do think they like Voisin in the slot. So, that's the position he's played now. When they get Voisin back, maybe things will change up. But, yeah, when you look at 165 pounds, he just screams slot receiver, but not necessarily with the way they run the offense. He's played a lot on the outside as well.
So who do you think, or who do you expect to join Pritchett there along with Voisin in that wide receiver starting lineup?
Yeah, I think it'll be Javon Ivory, the Memphis transfer last year. He was a starter last year, although they'll do a lot of two tight end formations too, so it may be a 2-and-2 situation. And DJ Thomas Jones is back at tight end. He's a guy that's been a real contributor for 2 years and really emerged as a red zone receiver late in the year last year. They brought in a transfer from Bowling Green, Andrew Bench, who is a 1-year guy, kind of the classic inline blocking tight end, with DJ Thomas Jones being kind of the move tight end, the H-back, if you will. And then they have a redshirt freshman, Trent Thomas, who played very little, if at all, last year. But he's a great athlete, was a really good high school basketball player. He's about 6'6", and kind of developing him as kind of the future guy. But, yeah, you'll see a lot of two tights and 2 receivers as well as 3 receivers, and of course even 4 when the occasion.
Kind of touching back on those tight ends a little bit. Last season they had a lot of production in the passing game with the DJ Thomas Jones, who you mentioned, and then also Lincoln Suffolk, who graduated. Yeah. Kind of, do you think Thomas Jones is going to increase that production this year, or is it going to be about the same as what we saw last year?
No, I would. Well, it's hard to say because Suffolk was a good receiver. Thomas Jones is got talent there as well. It kind of depends on what get out of Devin Boyson. If they, there's obviously only so many balls that can go around. But I think Thomas Jones is, kind of a proven commodity. Maybe you'll see 30, 40 receptions out of him. I don't really know much about Andrew Bench, to be honest with you. Didn't get to see him, but I would expect that Thomas Jones is your main receiving tight end. And then it'll be receivers and backs for most of the other passing action.
The offensive line returns 3 of the 5 starters from 2023. How did this unit shape up in the spring?
Yeah, well, it was 3 starters until Adrian Strickland, who is a 2-year starter at right tackle, went into the portal at the end of the spring. So they actually only have 2 guys back. They do like what they have on the left side. Jordan Davis at left tackle, former South Carolina transfer, started most of the year last year. Really kind of an NFL body, 6'5", 315 pounds. They really like him. And then Reed Byes, Mississippi State transfer, came right in and pretty much took over the left guard spot. So those 2 guys are solid. Malachi Preciado, who's a Purdue transfer, came in this spring, won the job at center. So they feel good about him. The right guard and the right tackle are kind of more fluid. Kenton Gerardo started the bowl game at right guard. He's a redshirt freshman last year, redshirt sophomore now. And then Lucas Taylor, Mobile guy, transferred in from Mississippi State last year, but had some off-field health problems, was not able to participate. But he came back in the spring, so I think those 2 guys will kind of battle it out there. Right tackle right now looks like Malachi Carney, who was kind of a versatile guy who played both sides at tackle and played some guard as well. He's a redshirt sophomore, but based on, especially after losing Strickland, would not be surprised to see them go get somebody out of the portal to kind of fill in a hole there.
If you had to pick one offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would that be?
I think that Braylon McReynolds probably. I think he was kind of poised for that last year as the number 2 back, but then he broke his collarbone in week 1. Really, explosive guy. Again, not very big, about 5'8", 190, but can really, really run. Good kick returner. I think we'll see him in both kickoff and punt returns. So I think that's probably the guy that could do it. Of course, Gio Lopez, the freshman quarterback, could come right in and make everybody forget about everybody else that's ever played here. Since they signed him, they said this guy's going to be our quarterback in the future. They really like him. So that's a possibility. But I would say, just based on what I know up to this point, Brother McReynolds at running back is probably that guy.
So let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. There's a new but familiar leader in the defensive coordinator, Will Windham, who serves as a linebacker coach for the Jaguars in 2023. We assume this means the 4-2-5 defensive scheme that we saw under Coach Womack will remain?
Yeah, that was kind of a weird deal, too, because Womack, right before he left, he fired 4 assistant coaches, including Will Windham. But then after he left, and then Corey Batoon, the defensive coordinator, left and went to Missouri, they hired Wyndham back to be defensive coordinator. So it was almost he's back from last year, but there was a break in there. I think he actually was in the process of selling his house. He had taken a job at Arkansas State and all that and worked there for a couple of days, but then came back. And yeah, I think just, Wyndham, I'm sure long term will have his own ideas about how to do things defensively, but just in the spirit of continuity, especially as late as the change happened, it was late January before he came in. I think that they will do pretty much what they did last year. The scheme will certainly be the same. The setup will be the same. All the positions are the same and all that. But in terms of how often they blitz or how often they play man-to-man or zone or whatever, that may be a little bit different. But in terms of if you're looking at it, watching it, it's not going to look a whole lot different.
All right, let's talk about the guys up front along that defensive line. They lose Jamie Sheriff, Charles Coleman, Jamal Hickbottom, and Brock Higdon, but return Wakevius Tom, Carlos Johnson, Maurice Strong, Lamondre Brooks, and others. They also bring in Bryson Dixon coming over from Georgia Tech. How did that group look this spring, and did anyone stand out?
Yeah, it's really been the strength of the team the last few years, just because you had so many veteran guys. You had 3 seniors last year. You'll have 3 seniors this year, and Wakevius Thomas has probably been their best defensive lineman for the last couple of years. I expect that to continue. Kind of locks things down at the nose position. Maurice Strong is a guy who is a 7th-year senior. He got a medical red shirt for a year he missed back in 2021, plus the COVID year. He'll probably be the defensive tackle. Things are really kind of wide open on the at the main defensive end, which is what Jamie Sheriff played, and he was a really, really solid player the last couple of years. I think Ed Smith is a guy coming off a knee injury that cost him all of last year. He's got a chance to play there. Jalen Durgan, a junior college transfer, has got a chance to play there. Lamondre Brooks as well. But again, it could be a situation where they go and get somebody out of the portal to fill that spot, because I don't really know that coming out of the spring, if they really had anybody there that just looked like he's definitely going to win the job. I got to mention Jordan Norman as well, who is a redshirt freshman, also has a chance to play that defensive end spot. Carlos Johnson, kind of a versatile guy that can fill in at nose or defensive tackle. But, in terms of a defensive end position, they don't really have anybody coming back that they really are, sold on just yet.
The linebacking group loses its top 3 tacklers from 2023 in Quentin Wilfon, Trey Kisser, and James Miller. They do return Dalton Hughes, Blaine Myrick, and others. They also bring in a transfer from Liberty, Akil Washington. How did that linebacking group look in the spring?
Well, again, I thought it looked okay, and then Khalil I'm drawing a blank on Khalil Jacobs, who was probably going to be their best linebacker. He's in the portal. So they lost their top 4 guys, basically. Myrick is a redshirt sophomore. He's a guy that played safety in high school and has really kind of bulked up to become a linebacker in college. I think he's a good, solid inside linebacker. They play 2 inside linebackers and 1 outside linebacker. That they call it the wolf position. A lot of people call it a buck or a jack or whatever. It's kind of a pass rusher guy. That's what Washington is going to be. Played quite a bit at Liberty, and so I think he's going to be the starter there. The second inside linebacker position, though, with Khalil Jacobs gone, really don't know what it's going to be yet. Gavin Forshea, who's a former Kansas State transfer, and then Dalton Hughes, who's a redshirt junior. Both of those guys played outside last year, so they moved inside in the spring. I would expect it'll be some sort of job sharing arrangement to them. But of all the losses in the portal, including Lacey and Yam Banks at safety, who we'll get to, losing Khalil Jacobs was a huge blow. I mean, they were expecting him to be kind of the bell cow of this defense, and now he's gone.
Speaking of the defensive backfield there, like you mentioned, you lose Yam Banks, which is a big loss. I feel like next year, this time, is definitely someone we could hear his name being called for the NFL draft. But they also lose Marquise Robinson and Jalen Jordan. They return Jaden Voisin, Ricky Fletcher, Mike Harris as others, and they bring in Ladarius Webb Jr. from Oklahoma State and Jordan Scruggs over from Hutchinson Junior College. How did that unit look this spring?
Yeah, the first the corners. I think Ricky Fletcher on one side is definitely solid. I think they thought he was he's gonna be kind of their next big name defensive back there. They've had some good ones, including Darrell Luter, now plays for the San Francisco 49ers. Marquise Robinson, they call him Cuddy. He transferred to Arkansas after the season, so they got to fill that spot. Looks like Reggie Neely, who's a junior college transfer, or Jordan Scruggs, who you mentioned, who came in this year, will probably have a chance to be the guy there at that spot. And so at safety, Jaden Voisin, you mentioned, is back, and he's an all-conference guy. Devin's twin brother, really solid. You don't lose anything there with him. The other position, probably Mike Harris, who started some late in the year last year. Keith Gallman is another guy who went in the portal after the spring, although he was a seventh-year starter and had been a seventh-year player, He had been a 3-year starter early in his career, but had back-to-back years, one where he missed the entire season and one where he missed most of the season with torn pectoral muscles. He tore each one, actually. And
Oh, wow.
I don't know. He just really wasn't quite the same player when he came back. But so I think Harris will be the guy there. But, yeah, you mentioned Lardarius Webb Jr., whose father played in the NFL for a long time. He's LaDamian Webb's cousin. Looked like a real playmaker in the spring. I think he's going to jump in and be that. They call it the Husky position, which is their nickel safety. You have to play some corner, play some safety. I think he'll take over for Yam Banks at that spot. And he's a guy that he's small. I mean, he's about 5'10", 175 pounds. But I think if things go what they expect it to be, he could be just probably as good as Yam Banks. So that's a guy to watch for sure on the defense, I would say.
If you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would you pick for that?
Yeah, I would have said Khalil Jacob, but he's gone now. So I think Blaine Myrick, inside linebacker, has got a shot to be kind of a future star. I think that Lardarius Webb, but even though he's got a somewhat of a big name because of his dad and because he's LaDamian's cousin, really hasn't played a whole lot at the major college level. He was on the team at Oklahoma State last year, but barely played. So I think that if he's as good as he looked in the spring, he's got potential to be a good one as well.
With spring practice now over, which position group or groups do you feel is the most concerning?
I would say the linebacker on defense, I mentioned, because of all the losses and because of the late loss of Jacobs. And then on offense, the right side of the offensive line. They got to figure out what they're going to do there. There are guys there. They're talent there, but they got to sort them all out.
Do you think they might be looking in the portal for some backups or replacements along those two spots?
Yeah, I think they probably there's talk. They only have 3 quarterbacks on scholarship, so possibility they could bring in another quarterback. I do think that because they have so many seniors at tight end and a receiver, you might see a guy or two there. But yeah, definitely an offensive lineman. I would say a defensive end, maybe another outside linebacker because Akeel Washington, I think, if I remember correctly, in the spring, basically all the guys backing him up will walk on. So you're going to need at least one other guy there. And yeah, I think you probably could use one more safety as well. And so I think that's probably where they're at. They're probably, I would say they probably had 7 or 8 guys in the portal.
You mentioned the defensive line being a strength of the team. Is that the main strength of this team here in 2024, or are there some others that you would also like to highlight?
Yeah, I would say defensive line on defenses, but for sure. And then the receivers. I do think the receivers are solid. You got some veteran guys. Like I said, there's 5 seniors, guys that have played a lot of football, especially if Devin Voisin comes back and can be what they think what he was before. I think I really expect this team to kind of, assuming Gio Lopez, can handle it. I expect this team to kind of be carried by offense this year more so than it has in the past. You just got so many veterans on that side of the ball. The defense really, you got basically 4 starters back. So, I expect the offense to kind of carry things, and that passing game should be pretty good.
we've touched on it throughout about the impacts that the transfer portals had on the South Alabama roster. How about NIL? Like, what in terms of just recruiting and player retention is South Alabama? Do they have a pretty robust NIL program, or that's something they're just getting started? Or
Yeah, it's something they're just getting started, and they're kind of in an unusual situation in that, and I know you probably know this with Old Dominion as well, that you just don't have. They haven't been playing football for very long. They've only been playing. This is year 15, 16. So your alumni base, a lot of them, the older people with money, so to speak, they grew up rooting for other teams, because there was no football at South Alabama, even if they went to school here. So you kind of have to build that alumni base over time. They have started an NIL program, but in terms of being able to throw out six figures at a guy or whatever, they're just not.
that's probably the whole budget.
Yeah, exactly.
For the whole NIL program, not just for football, but
Yeah.
basketball and everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
It seems more and more the demands of the head coach are really turning into more of a general manager type role
Mhm.
with, again, the recruiting, keeping your players, fundraising, and then kind of moving away from the X's and O's. Maybe it's just in the off season, maybe it's during the season, but do you see that trend happening at South Alabama?
No, for sure. And you definitely saw it with Womack, and you'll see it with Applewhite as well. You just, like you said, you got to re-recruit your own team. I mean, which is just crazy, but that's the job now. You don't get to just sit around and draw up ball plays all the time. I mean, you just got to do it, and that's why I think that's why you're seeing a lot of coaches leave college to go to the NFL to become assistant coaches in the NFL, and I would expect that trend to continue until unless they make some changes and get a handle on these things.
Has South Alabama done anything in
Does help.
terms of like additional personnel to help?
Yeah, I mean, they have they have kind of an off-field staff just like everybody does. It's definitely bigger than it was 5 years ago, but in terms of it's not going to be like the Florida team picture where you got 50 guys in pullover standing there with the school logo on it.
Yeah.
It's like, who are all these people? But they're doing what they can. I'll say that they just it's the Sun Belt, and you get your little bit of bonus money because of the college football playoff, and you try to make the best make that go as far as you can.
At the end of
What does success look like?
I think you want to
We'll
get
cut
to
it.
a bowl. Yeah, all right.
No, we'll cut it in the justice you can ask.
Go ahead. All right, go.
the 2024 season is over. It's done, and you look back on it. What needs to happen for you to what would define success for the South Alabama Jaguars?
Yeah, I think getting back to a bowl game again, because I really did think going into after last season was over, going into this year, that they were going to have a chance to be one of the better teams in the West. Texas State, I think, is probably going into the preseason favorite. Louisiana is improving. Arkansas State's improving. I think Troy might take a step back. So I really thought South Alabama was going to be, one of the main contenders. But with the losses to the portal, I'm not quite sure they're there yet. And with the coaching staff turnover as well. But I think if they can finish with a winning record, get back in a bowl game, that'll be a successful season.
Well, we covered a lot in this episode. Is there anything that you would like to share with us and the listeners about this South Alabama team here for 2024?
But no, in terms of the team, they got a really rough schedule to start the season. I would say that's one thing to really make note of. You open with North Texas, which is generally a bowl-ish team, and then you play week 2 at Ohio, which won 10 games last year. You get Northwestern State in week 3, but then you go to App State and to LSU in back-to-back weeks, then to Arkansas State before you get a little bit of a break, and then you play Troy. You get like a 10-day window before you play Troy. So that first 6, if you can come out of that 3-3 or 4-2, you're doing really well. So I would expect this team to kind of, do better down the stretch. So they may get off to a little bit of a rough start. I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
Well, thank you again, Craig, for sharing your time and knowledge with us today. We greatly appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, if you are watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you are listening in podcast form, please give us a rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until next time, we are the G5 Hive.